Alright, so today we're going to go over Arnold Schwarzenegger's gym and fridge. Done a few of these gym and fridge videos so far. They're always a good time. Kind of interesting to see how different people train and how they eat. It's the whole idea here. So we're going to dig into it.
What do you want?
Alright, Arnold.
I think you could already tell, Arnie's a legend. A big part of that is, doesn't have anything to do with just necessarily his physique, which was, of course, amazing, but also you can tell that the man is a performer. You can tell that from just the very start of this video, and that's part of the reason why he is such a big name even today.
Arnold, we're here to see your fridge. You ready? Let's do it.
What is it exactly that you want to see in the fridge? You just want to see the food? Or do you want to bust me because I'm not 100% vegan? Or what is it that you're up to? Follow me. So anyway, this is the refrigerator in my office. You have your fruits, you have vegetables. You have one of my favorite things that when it gets hot, I have watermelons, cut up watermelons.
I do think that's kind of an insane fridge. Like, you can tell how this is the fridge of a rich person that's been so carefully, meticulously staged. And you can tell that, nobody actually lives like this or eats like this. And again, like he mentioned, this is like an office fridge, so it's maybe not, like a primary food fridge, which is part of the reason why it's so nice. But you can tell again, like he's had somebody who, some house help who got this all nice and neat and tidied up, cut up all the watermelon chunks for him and everything. It must be cool to live like a rich person, I guess. There's a lot of fruit in here, a lot of veggies, that's great, some drinks, sure, some eggs it looks like, a package of beef and an avocado. Again, you can tell this isn't really necessarily from making meals. A lot of this is probably just kind of here for the sake of, I guess that's really not actually beef, it's probably fake beef. It looks like it says Beyond Beef. But yeah, probably not necessarily actually a fridge for preparing meals out of, more so that it's just kind of like staged for the camera shot, which okay, a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is.
Of course, the Radler, which is a German drink, a combination of lemonade and beer. I love it. Most people don't know that, but it's my secret protein drink. Don't tell anyone, okay? This is between us.
Okay, that's not, I don't know what he means by that. Is that an innuendo? There's no protein in that. That's beer and lemonade. That's all carbs. Interesting. Let's see where he goes.
So here we go with the protein. You wanted to see how a protein is made? There's nothing special about it. I just put in a little bit of this almond milk. Not much, just a little bit. And also for muscle soreness and sometimes bone soreness. Put a little bit of that in there. Then you go and you put the banana in. Now there's an egg, a raw egg that we put in there. Well, actually, I like to put in the whole egg.
Okay, I'm going to address this, right? So he's saying basically that he puts in the whole egg, shell and all, in the blender to add some extra calcium. So I'm gonna push back in both directions on this, right? So on the one hand, yeah, that probably works. Like, you are probably adding a bit of calcium, and when you're blending it up like this, I can say from personal experience, you don't actually notice, you probably don't want to sit down and eat an eggshell by itself, but if you blended it up, you powder it, mix it in with all this other stuff, you probably can't taste it at all. And the same thing with raw eggs. I've done a lot of shakes with raw eggs. I used to follow a lot of stuff from Arnie back in the day. I used to follow a lot of stuff from Bruce Lee as well. I was really big on smoothies. I would throw in basically some protein powder, some fruit, maybe a bit of milk, maybe a bit of ice, whatever. And often I would mix in some other stuff, bit of veggies, whatever. And I did that for a long time, and I will say that you can't necessarily taste the raw egg at all. It's not weird, you kind of get used to it. So, on the one hand, yeah, totally fine to throw that in there, I guess. Probably wouldn't cause you any problems, etc. At the same time, on the other hand, I can't imagine that you actually need that much calcium. I don't imagine that is the the difference between you getting enough calcium and not getting enough calcium. You don't necessarily need extra calcium. Most people have most of their micronutrient needs covered by just the normal foods that they eat. And I mean, you know, if you wanted to get in some more calcium, you could probably very easily supplement with it or just drink a bit more milk or something like that. So I don't necessarily think that you need to be putting, you know, eggshells into your shakes for the sake of the calcium alone, because again, it's probably not going to be very useful or necessary. So, I mean, is this a hack? Is this a, you know, an elite, you know, high, you know, diet trick? I mean, not necessarily. I guess you could use it if you're interested, if you wanted to, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't recommend it. So that's that.
Now, this drink, literally, you could serve at any bar, health bar or any other bar. I sometimes put in the schnapps. I sometimes put in the tequila. So it just gives it a little extra flavor.
I mean, this is classic Arnie too. Like, you know, we've established this about him. He loves his alcohol. Like, in terms of actual health benefits, not a good idea. But, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone indulges a little bit. And again, like, Arnie's kind of a prankster, a jokey guy. So, you know, he's just messing around a bit.
What does your diet look like these days?
Well, as you can see, I'm health conscious. I was not always health conscious because when I was young, you know, you get away with a lot of things, a little bit from that. And now I eat more, you know, like oatmeals and greens and vegetables and healthy food. Stay away more from the meats and more from animal products, animal proteins, because there was this misconception it's the only way you get big and strong. So now I backed off that, and I feel much better by being more on greens.
Do you cook at all?
Yeah, of course.
So I would say that this is a pretty common path that a lot of people go through. I kind of went through it myself. Basically, I spent, you know, basically the entirety of my 20s. You know, I lifted hard. I didn't do any cardio. I made sure I got in a decent amount of protein, but I didn't really pay any other attention to my diet. And, you know, in my 30s, I realized that I had inherited my dad's blood pressure issues, and I really needed to actually, you know, start doing more cardio, actually pay attention to my diet and so on. And that's pretty common. You can get away with a lot more when you're younger than you can when you're older. I would say another really classic example of this is Cully Muscle. He was a guy who basically started out, like, his whole shtick was that he was young, he was jacked, and he bragged about, like, the crappiest diet known to man. You know, he would talk about how he's, like, eating ramen noodles and how he's, like, you know, he had, like, his energy drink, which was basically just Coca-Cola mixed with instant coffee, right? Stuff that is not necessarily going to be good for you. And then, of course, he got a bit older, he had a heart attack, he had a lot of health issues, and he pivoted really hard in the other direction, so that nowadays he does these, like, extreme eating challenges where he, like, eats a crap ton of fruit or vegetables or whatever, and, you know, he, like, swears off meat and all that, right? I do want to push back on that a little bit, because we do have the research you can eat meat in a healthy way. And Arnie is right here when he says you don't necessarily need to eat meat to get in the protein that you need to get big. That's also very true. You can get very big on a vegetarian or vegan diet, provided that you are getting in enough protein from plant sources. The problem there is that it is maybe a little more difficult to get in protein from plant sources sometimes. And of course, a lot of people are not actually watching their protein intake. And then, of course, a lot of people see, like, natural vegan bodybuilders, right, who are naturally going to be a lot leaner than, you know, juiced vegan bodybuilders. But the problem is that generally when you talk about somebody who's, like, you know, eating vegan dietarily for moral reasons, they're probably not also going to be the kind of person who wants to be taking a crap ton of pharmaceuticals. So, you know, it is kind of a misconception, you know, the idea that you can't get big while, you know, mostly eating a vegetarian and vegan diet. You absolutely can. I've certainly eaten vegetarian for, you know, like, definitely chunks of my training career and saw great results off of it. Again, you just have to be a little bit more cautious about your protein intake, a little bit more cautious about your supplementation. You can certainly make it work. And of course, I'm glad that Arnie has found something that works for him. That's obviously very important at the end of the day, is that you find an approach that works for you. Now, that said, of course, getting in more veggies getting in more fruits, getting in more fiber, that is always good for you, regardless. That is always good for you no matter what kind of diet you have. And so I would always encourage you to eat more fibrous foods, no matter who you are, even if you're eating a ton of meat, etc., because there is a huge health benefit for that.
But I mean, I always was called the garbage disposal because I was never sick and tired of anything. I mean, anything is...
That's me for a long time.
I would say to people, make me an omelet. And they said, what do you want to have in an omelet? And I said, anything that's in the kitchen sink or anything that you can find on the kitchen floor. Just break it up and put it in there, and I would love it. And that's exactly what they did.
That's, I mean, very often I'm the person in my family who eats everybody's leftovers. You know, it is what it is. Sometimes you're just a hungry person. You don't care too much about what you eat, and, you know, here you are.
I don't have time for fat diets or anything like that. I have to go on a real serious kind of a regimen. It's I cut out just simply all the sugar products, and I cut out all the white bread.
I mean, in general, that's, you know, like what most people need. Most people do not need to be super restricting their calories. They don't need to be, you know, following a weird, you know, particular diet. What most people need is to be more active, to be managing their sleep, their recovery, their mental health, and to be eating a bit less junk food, you know, cutting down on the sweets a bit, eating a bit more lean proteins, eating a bit more fibrous foods, fruits and vegetables. That's 90% of the equation. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't have to get too much more complicated than that. Of course, you know, white bread is a very funny one. I think that white bread used to get a lot more demonized way back in the day. I mean, yes, it is basically just carbs, but, you know, it's nice to have a sandwich, right? Not the worst thing in the world, especially if it's paired with other stuff.
The thing is that called supplements, the supplement of what you eat. So the key thing is not to rely on the supplements as much as you rely on good food, natural food, a lot of greens, a lot of fruits, and a lot of really good proteins.
Does Arnold ever have a cheat?
Yeah, 100% correct. It's called a supplement because it should be a supplement, should not be a primary dietary focus.
How often do you work out?
I work out every day. I work out in the morning from around 7 to 7:45, and then I ride the bicycle every morning for around 45 minutes, and then many times I go back at night and I work out at home in the home.
I think that, you know, like, when Artie says here, like, he works out every day, it's clear that maybe he's not necessarily lifting every day. He's, you know, implying that he's probably doing a bit of cardio every morning and then, you know, like, maybe doing some lifting in the evening. And there's a great approach there, right? Obviously, it's probably a bit easier for Arnie when, you know, he's got, like, a home gym that he can go to. That makes it a lot easier to do, you know, roughly 2 workouts a day. And, of course, that's not always going to be feasible for everybody. But, you know, it's a pretty awesome approach, works pretty well.
I'm not really training that heavy anymore because after my heart surgery, I was advised not to train heavy and not to do any more going for 3 reps and the heaviest weight and all that stuff. So I do more kind of lighter weights and more reps.
That's totally fair. You can build, you know, muscle equally effectively with lighter weights or heavier weights. And for many people dealing with injury, dealing with situations like Arnie's where you need to, you know, keep the strain a little bit lower on your heart, on your blood pressure, etc., yes, it makes more sense to stick to lighter weights. And so this is why this is often what you see with, like, rehabilitation settings, is that they do, you know, very light weights for very high numbers of repetitions, because that's the easiest way to start, you know, sort of building up the movement, building a bit of strength and stability, and, you know, really getting the health benefits out of training without having to push super, super hard. Of course, going super light, probably not the most convenient for most people. If you're young, if you're healthy, if you're able to push hard, then go ahead and push hard. You'll probably get slightly better results out of it. But, you know, at the end of the day, you don't have to push hard to see results. You can see awesome results without having to push super hard. And, you know, you got to be honest and admit that, you know, like, sometimes that's exactly what people need. And, you know, it's exactly what Arnie needs in this situation.
All right, now it's time for our rapid fire questions. Squat and deadlift.
When you say squat or deadlift, it's the same thing as saying drinking or eating.
Yep. I mean, yeah, it's like, you know, what are you talking about? Those are both such fundamental movement patterns. You got to be good at both of them, honestly, if you want to be a good lifter. So, like, why pick favorites?
I mean, I think you need both, right? So therefore, it's a crazy question. You should try to work out the whole body minimum of 3 times a week.
Dumbbells and kettlebells.
It makes no difference because the muscle doesn't see what you're holding in your hands.
Run on a treadmill or in weight up?
Oh, all right. Listen, guys, I gotta get back to my workout, okay? Time for 40 round is over. So, over there, say exit. And don't say I'll be back, okay?
Well, I'd say that was a pretty solid video. I'd say that Arnie has a pretty good handle on things. Obviously, there's, parts of it where he gets a little bit goofy, which is, pretty much expected. But I mean, aside from that, in terms of his understanding of diet, in terms of his understanding of training, it's clearly pretty solid. Admittedly, he did not go super in-depth about his training, so, there's not really too much to analyze there, so we don't know exactly, what the exact routine is. But in a general sense, his focus is on, like the big stuff that matters, and obviously on being sort of a health communicator or being somebody who encourages other people to, pursue their own health and fitness. And so I can't really fault him for it. I'd like to have more info so we could dig into this a bit more. But honestly, it sounds like, again, I can't really criticize him too much. The guy's a legend. He's way more jacked than I ever will be. And, he's got a much bigger career and influence than I ever will have, most likely. So, all I can do is sort of, say, tip my hat to him. Looking good, especially for his age. You can look great for many, many years, so long as you continue to stay active throughout your life the way Arnie has. And, it sets an example for the rest of us. That's all there is to say. So that is all for this week's video. I hope you have enjoyed it. As always, don't hesitate to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you would like to see in future videos. And I will see you all next week. Have a good one.